Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Day two of our little pop-ups here for December. And just as a reminder, thanks to everyone who's here with us. Dan and I are excited to be joined by the amazing, talented Rachael Bade.
No pressure.
No pressure. Exactly. Save us. So we're going to be doing this for the next couple of weeks till we break. And then during that time, we're setting up what will be called the Huddle starting January 5th, Monday, January 5th. We will involve you guys, take your questions, and engage you in a way to break down the issues that are driving the political news and the tips that we're hearing. And I think we will become the preeminent place to hear what's going on in Washington, what tips Rachel's hearing from her sources, and what we think is going to happen forward-looking on some of these big issues, especially as we head into the new year. So for the month of December, we're having fun from 8:30 to 9, and then starting Monday, January.
No fun in January. No fun in January.
Yeah, it's all business, baby. We're going to treat January like the Patriots treated the Giants last night, Dan.
Let's move on. On.
I should just tell our audience, first of all, that I know nothing about sports. So anytime they joke about or say something about a football game, a soccer game, whatever the heck is going on, I'm just gonna.
Yeah, let me give you a little primer. Patriots, best team in America, 11-2, destroyed. The Giants couldn't even kick. When I say kick a field goal last night, they didn't make contact with the ball.
Any time you're being compared to the butt fumble by another New York team, it is a low moment. Yeah. But rather than football, I'd like to just point out that the floral arrangement in Casa de Spicer, it is 'tis the season. The poinsettias are up. Rachel, if you don't know, those are Amazon's finest.
No, those are real.
Oh, those are real.
Those are actually.
This is the one season, huh? That they're real.
Water on the floor.
I'm more of a fake floral person. No, don't be making fun of Amazon's finest. Dan.
The other ones were.
I have them.
The yellow ones were, I will admit that. These are literally, and I was warned this morning that one of them needs a little bit more fertilizer. So expect further
bloom. Better get on that. Right.
So they're real and they're fantastic is what you're telling me.
Yeah, Home Depot's finest, actually. All right. With that, look, the president's got two things on his schedule today. I think both will be driving news. We can get into that in a minute. He's got his 9th cabinet meeting. So buckle up, prepare 4 or 5 hours for that. And then we've got an announcement later today from the president on what everyone has been told will be these Trump savings accounts for kids going forward, which I think is actually a smart move. Whether or not it makes it into law, we can get into at some point later. But Rachel, obviously driving the news today are these Venezuelan boat strikes. Congress is going to get involved. Why don't you kick us off as to what we know and where we think this is headed?
A couple things quick on the agenda there, Sean. USA Today this morning was reporting that Michael Dell, the CEO of Dell Technologies, will be at this 2 p.m. announcement where they're going to announce that he's donating $6 billion to Trump's new accounts for newborns, and they're going to be asking other businesses to do the same. So if you're wondering about that agenda, that's there. And then at 5 p.m., don't forget the Christmas tree lighting at the hill on the hill. So that's the hill one. Yes. A little cheer for all this chaos we're seeing today regarding the boat strike scandal here. So yeah, let's just start there.
By the way, do we think Michael Dell, his company is private, maybe has something pending with the, I mean, that is a random,
Dan,
it's a wonderful act of kindness.
It's the holiday season. He is in a giving mode.
Okay. All right.
If I had $6 billion, I would
building
donate it.
chits with the administration for doing that. Let's be honest. Okay. So yes, boat strike gate, as I am calling it this morning. Yesterday we got a little bit of clarity, but also a lot more mud, I would say, on this story. The White House, the administration, and Secretary of Defense / Secretary of War Hegseth say the second strike did happen and survivors were killed, but they're pointing a finger at Admiral Mitch Bradley, a Navy SEAL officer who is the commander of the U.S. Special Forces, saying essentially that he was the one who gave the order. The New York Times has a story up that popped last night saying Hegseth never gave a, quote, kill everybody order. That was something that the Washington Post had reported, saying Hegseth had issued this sort of verbal order at the top of the strikes before they happened to kill everyone, and that is what the admiral basically was following through. The New York Times story suggests that he never did that. And he never said to send a second strike. So obviously the administration is going to point to this New York Times story and say, look, more fake news. But like, this is still really messy and really ugly for a lot of reasons. I mean, Sean, just start with that. How are you sort of taking in this, this mess and this scandal here?
So there's a bunch of things that are fascinating here, because I've seen this from both sides, multiple sides, from the military side, from folks on Capitol Hill, and then from obviously inside the White House when strikes go on. I was in the White House when General McKenzie, then the commander of Afghanistan's forces, dropped what they call the mother of all bombs, the Moab, and the president was like, "Hey, get the chairman in here. I want to get a briefing on this," and whatever. And it's interesting because sometimes the commander on the ground has certain authorities and doesn't always think, hey, I should probably brief the press and the public what I'm doing. And I think in some cases, what happened here is similar. We talked about this yesterday. This, to your point, is what the Washington Post actually wrote. It said it revealed that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth gave a spoken order to kill all crew members aboard a vessel suspected of smuggling drugs in the Caribbean Sea. That is, as I said yesterday, doesn't pass the smell test. That's not how a standard operation would work. And I think rightly so, they called it out. And now the New York Times, in their report this morning, makes it clear that it was Admiral Bradley's call to do this. And just to keep everyone in context in this, Admiral Bradley is a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. He's been detached to SEAL Teams 2, 4, 6. I mean, he is a badass. Like, this guy was the commander of JSOC. He's the commander of Special Operations Command. He's a 4-star admiral. This is not his first rodeo. He's one of the first guys ever to deploy in Afghanistan. This is a guy who has seen combat. He knows the rules of engagement. And so the reason all that's important, and when you go into the New York Times story, and this is where the fog of war really matters, because if people aren't giving specific explanations as to what happened, then a lot of people start making up, connecting dots that aren't there. And so the difference is, if you read the Times story, it says Admiral Bradley ordered the initial missile strike and then several follow-up strikes that killed the initial survivors and sank the disabled boat. So if you fire on the boat's still moving or not completely disabled, and then you continue to fire on it because it's still a target, and additional people die, that would seem to be completely in keeping with the commander's intent, which is to destroy the capabilities of the ship. If you specifically targeted innocents, combatants, then that's a different story. And this is where the distinction is going to matter. And this is why I point out Admiral Bradley's background, because this is not a guy who was like day one in the Navy, like, hey, which button presses go. This is a very, very experienced warfighter who knows the rules of engagement, who has been around the block multiple times, probably one of the most experienced warfighters in our military. And so the idea that he gave some sort of random one-off order to go, it just doesn't make sense.
And that's the challenge, I think, because the people who I assume would know more than the public, the chair of the Armed Services Committee in the Senate, the Republican chair in the House, the congressional leadership, who are part of the Big Eight, and the White House, seem to be very careful with their words, and nobody is really rushing to Hegseth's defense. Caroline Leavitt kind of did, but if you go back and read those words, there's some ambiguity in there. And given the history of full-throated defenses, both on Capitol Hill and the White House, it does make you wonder, like, what other shoes are going to drop. And of course, Sean and Rachel, one of the big issues is Hegseth has been on thin ice kind of from day one on Capitol Hill. There were a lot of people who were concerned about that nomination, who don't think he's a necessarily serious person. You know, the videos of him doing push-ups all the time. He likes to use very bold language on social media. I don't get the sense he has a lot of allies, but as you always say, Sean, the only one that matters is Trump. Rachel, what is your thought here?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think despite the New York Times story, this is still a mess for the administration, specifically for Hegseth. I mean, anytime you have Republican senators who are unwilling to say they support a cabinet secretary, that's problematic. I mean, lawmakers on the Hill, John Thune, Senate Majority Leader, was asked about Hegseth in particular, and he declined to say that he supports him. You have a lot of Republicans up there who are openly questioning, like, what happened here? And, you know, there's a lot of whispers around town amongst Republicans. And I think the Post had a story, they had a lead about this last night, saying that this was prevalent also, at the Pentagon, where people are like, what are they doing throwing this admirable under the bus? Like, why are they doing that with Bradley? Doesn't the buck stop with leadership here? I think a lot of Republicans who are critical of Hegseth have said that he has a problem sort of taking blame and sort of accepting that he did something wrong, and often is looking to sort of pawn it off on others. Don Bacon was out there talking, I think it was last night. This is Republican from Nebraska, who is critical of Hegseth. He has said he should step down before, said he did the same thing with Signalgate, right? Like, he blamed other people. I just think this whole look is obviously really bad, and this is going to continue for the coming days. But
and wait, I have one other question, Sean. Do you think the entire White House senior staff is with Hegseth? Like, is the senior Trump team divided?
That was what I was just going to ask.
Yeah, because look, for our side, we smell blood, right? The other side is divided, and people are pointing fingers, and so for Democrats, like, this is another opportunity to drive it. But what do you think, Sean, inside that senior staff is going on?
So the thing that's interesting about this whole situation is you have a media, like, if you think about the two sources that are driving this, the Washington Post initially, and then the New York Times, they're not exactly on good terms with the Department of War right now. And so the problem is that you don't have those natural allies when you can call and say, hey, we'll walk you through this. And I think the one thing that Hegseth has going for him is that if you call President Trump right now and say the New York Times or the Washington Post made up this completely fictitious story, this is not what happened, I think you're going to get a lot of sympathy from President Trump. He's going to say, I knew it, that this is fake news, the Washington Post. I don't know where the rest of the staff is on that. And this is where, again, what, like, as I was explaining, when General McKenzie are in Afghanistan, when they dropped the mother of all bombs, it wasn't that they didn't have the authority to do it. They did. But that the president was like, why wasn't I informed of this? Why didn't I somebody should have told me if something this big is going to, somebody is going to do this, like, let me know. Like, actually, the president was kind of excited about it. And I think that what needs to happen is to do this. But again, this is where the difference lies. If they had the authority to do this and did nothing wrong, then then you're not passing the buck onto anybody. You're actually doing your job and getting out there in the next couple of days and explaining this. I will tell you this right now. I actually was on the joint staff, I think around the same time as Admiral Bradley. So I say that because I can't say for certain that I have not met him, but I don't recall it. But his background, this is not a guy who you're going to pass the buck to or who's going to jump on the grenade. He is a bona fide badass. And this guy didn't do something that wasn't legal and above board. It's just not, you don't have a resume and a background like that guy does. And have those the guy has 4 Bronze Stars with valor. He is not somebody who just does stuff willy-nilly. And so he's not going to take an order that's not legal, and he's not going to execute an order that's not legal. So this is, again, where sometimes
channeling Mark Kelly, of course,
understanding the sort of the lay of the land matters. And with all due respect to some of the folks on the Hill, again, remember, neither of the chairman of the House Armed Services or the Senate Armed Services has ever served in the military. So to understand how a lot of this flows, we haven't been in war in a situation like this in a while. And so I say this respectfully to a lot of people. If you haven't been in the room, if you haven't seen how this stuff plays out, to sort of have a bunch of anonymous sources talk about this is not real. And I hope that Hegseth,
well, that'll be an interesting defense from the White House if it's those two don't really never served and don't know what they're doing.
That's not, and I'm not saying that should be a defense. I'm saying that to make sure everyone understands. Yeah. I'm not making excuses. I'm just sort of saying that, like, to the initial Washington Post story, right, claims that Pete Hegseth is in a room giving orders. That's not legit.
Well, hold on a second. Hegseth said he watched the attack.
Yes, sure. That's
So
not what the Washington Post said. It said,
that may be the proverbial room here. I mean, we need answers.
Hold on. It says this is directly from the Washington Post. Gave a spoken order to kill all crew members aboard. There's no way that happened. And so that's what this started it all. That's not, I mean, honest to God, and now the New York Times, this isn't like Breitbart. The New York Times is now basically, oh, that's not how it happened.
Yeah, that's sort of where, like, if you watch the Twitter traffic yesterday, you saw a lot of people on the left after Caroline Leavitt did her briefing, sort of confirming certain things happened, going back to Sean Parnell at the Pentagon saying, look, you were lying when you made this statement saying the Post story was, quote, fabricated, or this narrative was fabricated. But like, they are disputing that he in any way made some sort of verbal, directive to kill everyone. So anyway, everybody seems to be parsing words here, depending on what narrative they want.
I don't think it's parsing words to say, if you accuse me of, hey, you shot somebody, and I say, God, I was in a room when it happened, that's not the same thing. And I don't think it's parsing words. And when you're giving an order to blow up combatants that aren't armed or posing a threat, and then saying, oh, you were in a room watching it, that's a very different scenario.
Yeah. And let's remind people, Bradley is going to be briefing lawmakers on the Hill on Thursday. So it will be obviously in a classified setting, I'm pretty sure. So we'll probably won't hear much about that, but it would be really interesting to hear his perspective. I think that's what everybody is sort of waiting for right now. What was the intention? What was the
and what else was said? Don't forget, they've never showed the legal order. They won't share it with Congress. So, I mean, that's another part, again, that we will find out. But let's move on, because
I have to make one more point, though. I think
that
that hearing is, I mean, those briefings are going to be critical to this, because again, you're not getting someone up there. I mean, you cannot deny that this guy, his background, his experience, when Bradley goes up there and does that, I think his credentials are impeccable. And I think that's going to, that to me, I think is going to do a lot to put this to rest, or at least give it a much more clarity.
And I will say Mark Kelly was on Morning Joe this morning praising his record. So I do think what he says will carry a lot of weight. But no, let's move on to this. We have sort of a fun little segment we wanted to do called Meet the Press with this cabinet meeting today. The president
and the congressional leaders.
Yes, going to be asked a ton of questions by reporters. What do you guys think he's going to be asked about it? What do you think he's going to talk about?
Oh, at the cabinet meeting?
Yes.
You mean, well, first of all, I just got to say, I love these things. To me, they're like monthly report cards. I'm serious. Like, the beautiful thing about Trump cabinet meetings is you can't hide. So he goes around and he's like, Brooke, what do you have for me? And she's like, well, Mr. President, this is what we did in agriculture. Like, I know, I read the playbook right up this morning, and I'm sorry, like, as an American citizen, granted a Trump supporter unabashedly, but I like hearing, you can't hide. In the last 30 days, what did you do? And
but it also tends to turn into like how great Trump is. Like, who can outpraise him the most? I mean, it is a little Baghdad Bob-ish.
You know what? That at least there are a lot. I mean, tell me, close your eyes and name one cabinet member from Joe Biden's administration. At least what people are doing that are getting paid by the government now.
Yeah. Well, and at least reporters get to ask questions. And I mean, that's where and
that is true.
This weekend about the president being tired or whatever. I read it and I laughed. Like, I was like, this story is ridiculous. Tired.
That's a whole.
I got to be honest. That whole story was embarrassing. To write a story that says, after we covered up 4 years of Joe Biden, now we're going to talk about Trump, who's up at 6, truthing at like 4:30 in the morning and taking phone calls, and like the fact that he's tired because one day his right eye,
Well, that is not true. I mean, we've talked about this. He is physically slowing. It is a fact. You can just see it. Now, just because he truths and he's active, it's always been one of the ways that he's kind of contrasted that, right? I mean, sitting in a chair and firing out social media stuff is very different than actually kind of doing other things. So he is aging. I don't think anyone disputes that. His schedule is lighter. No one is disputing that.
People still say though that he does more in one day than most people who are my age. I mean, like
I agree with that. I mean, honestly, like I don't doubt, Dan, like multiple things can be true, and I don't mean to
I agree.
I feel like I'm 54, and it's like last night I'm struggling to stay up to watch the Patriots, right? And Donald Trump probably was taking phone calls till 12:30 at night and waking people up. Yeah, well, I mean, he's also the guy's also like up first thing in the morning. I can attest to
working the phones and calling people. Okay, but going back to this fun Meet the Press segment, I mean, Sean, you were texting last night about something you thought Besant would be bringing up and touting.
Oh yeah, I mean this Minnesota thing with Walz and the Somalis. First of all, you know what? Not to get out, but this is relevant to this whole Meet the Press thing. I still can't believe we're not talking more about this Somali fraud that happened in Minnesota, $1 billion of COVID funds intended for children under Tim Walz's watch. And then this issue with the National Guard. I mean, the idea that those aren't still the top two issues says a lot about our news cycle. But I think Besant's going to talk, obviously, a little bit about the attempts to go after fraud in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy news cycle right now, but that story, I mean, Dan, you were tweeting about it over the weekend. It's bad. It's really bad.
It's horrible. It's every stereotype of the party. Yep.
Yeah. And like the Department of Human Services in Minnesota, 480 workers going after their own governor, saying he retaliated against whistleblowers who said there was fraud here, that they wanted to investigate, and that he would not let them because he was concerned that there would be some sort of perception that they were discriminating against a minority community. Like, you're right, Dan. Like, this is exactly why people criticize and get mad at the Democratic Party on this issue all the time. Like, terrible headline.
Can I just the thing that and look, I'm not when Tim Walz was on Meet the Press, he literally said, and I get what he was saying, but the idea that his response to Kristen Welker was Minnesota's attractive to criminals because of how we do business. I was like, you've got to be kidding that that's your answer. Like, the idea that, like, you're basically saying, well, because of how we operate, we're attractive to criminals. It blows my mind that this story got so little attention, considering you're talking about $1 billion of COVID funding that was intended for kids. This was ripe to be like a blow up expose story. And yet it was like, let's sweep it under the rug and move on.
Well, look, it was the New York Times that did it. I mean, this was not a Washington Examiner story. Like, it was the New York Times on, a weekend fair. In the weekend paper. Look, I think you will hear more about this. I obviously think you're going to hear about it in the cabinet meeting today. I do not think you'll hear it at the Democrats post, caucus meeting today. I think they will be more focused on the ACA and affordability and probably this kind of idea of, like, we want answers, kind of across the board on the ICE deportation of the young college student, of what's happening in Venezuela. But I agree that story is horrific. It's everything. It's corruption. It's government waste. It's what's basically a DEI policy of, like, if you say anything about the Somalis, they're going to accuse you of racism and discrimination. And this, like, rampant corruption that people, I mean, on some level, the system caught it early, but then they were waved away, like, don't do anything. So I think you'll see kind of two split screens in the press availabilities today. I'll be curious about Speaker Johnson. He has his kind of post-conference meeting today. I think, Sean, we were all tweeting here or texting each other. Johnson's kind of hanging on a little bit right now. Like, it is a bumpy end.
Before we get to Johnson, can I just ask you guys this question? When we talk about the cabinet hearing, Dan, you mentioned the ACA.
Yeah.
And I was thinking of this as Rachel was asking the Besant question. You think about, you're going to get Hegseth's going to get asked or talk about the boats. Besant's
Venezuela.
Talk about the Venezuela and Pam Bondi might get asked about that, or immigration, or bring up what they're doing on these the prosecution for that dude. The funny part is, I wonder, does anyone talk about the ACA?
Yeah, I mean, I think reporters are going to ask them. Yeah,
but right, because the funny thing is that is one area that I have not really heard. In theory, that should be Bobby Kennedy's. And if Bobby's going to talk about anything today, I would say it's probably going to be more of the vaccine stuff.
I mean, he should be so lucky to talk about Obamacare subsidies if he's talking. I mean, like, let's remember what book comes out today.
But that's what I'm saying.
Olivia
That's, by the way, yeah.
Panto.
Oh, is that's today?
That's today.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
That's a conversation.
By the way, I will just say
for 15 minutes on.
Yeah.
To put a pin in this.
Topic number one tomorrow. Yeah.
Who's listening? There is a media personality named Olivia Nuzzi that has written a book, which is kind of like, from what I can I've been seeing, it's not even like it's sort of like it's not a bio thing, and it's
a kind of like a memoir,
but it's
covering the Trump
theory,
admin,
right?
But also about her love for RFK.
But she calls him like it's not. She never names him. She talks about this random I mean, so I just but I will say that this has become like, talk about like an inside the Beltway. Ryan Lizza, her former fiance, who was the sort of the scorned personality, if you will, has been dropping like breadcrumbs about how he found out about the relationship and whatever.
Breadcrumbs, bombs, one or the other.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating. I know that like 99% of America could care less about this story, but for like people who do know all the personalities.
I was going to say, everyone in Washington is reading this, and I have been surprised that nobody has asked anything about it in public, about their response to some of this stuff, which is very racy.
Well, Trump loves good gossip.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, there was reporting. I feel like there was reporting back when it first came out that they had this sort of online relationship, that the president was like actually wanted to know more about this, like, because like he wants to know if people are involved in scandal, and like he has a close relationship with RFK. And there was reporting at the time, I can't remember where, that he actually like called and asked about this. But we can talk about this more tomorrow if there's interest.
Overtime.
Keep moving, because there is a special election happening today in Tennessee's 7th district. We should not forget about that. Mark Green, the race to fill Mark Green's seat. He's obviously leaving. District Trump won by 22 points, and yet that is now competitive for Democrats. What are you both watching on this tonight?
I mean, I'm watching kind of two things, which is the GOP turnout. Like I imagine Democratic turnout for what there is in a Trump 22 district will be strong. But I'm curious, like, do all the parts of the Trump coalition in that district turn out? And who are the crossover voters? Meaning, let's assume that the Democrat loses by less than 22 points. Let's say it's 8 or something. What is that 14%? Who are they that have crossed over? Because that's what everyone else is then going to try to extrapolate to their district. Do I have a similar profile? Are those voters here? Because that's how you put the TikTok together of, am I in danger? Like, is there a pattern in New Jersey, in Virginia, and here of voters that either stayed home and or are switching their vote?
So I'll say the same thing I said in Virginia and New Jersey, which is the margin. I have come to believe, not believe, like through a lot of people that I've talked to, that this may have been close at one point. I also think I've said this since I ran special elections at the NRCC, special elections are special for a reason. And you can affect turnout in a lot of, like, the modeling and the polling is going to always be way off in something like this. And so the question I have is, was any of this accurate? Because if you were way off in Virginia and New Jersey on our side, we thought this race is a lot closer. And then on this one, if it turns out that Mark Van Epps wins by, 12, 13 points, which I think is where this thing probably ends up, then I think the question is, how bad really was it? Was this just, people not paying full attention or fully engaged? And the other thing is, remember, look, I've said this Afton Ben individual, I think in some ways is the Jay Jones of Tennessee. When Jay Jones said, this horrible thing about killing Todd Gilbert's children, and Todd Gilbert and then his child, everyone went, oh my God, can anyone believe this? Like, there's no way. And when Afton Ben said, I hate Nashville, I don't like country music and the bridal parties and whatnot, I think everyone went, oh my God, how can everyone say that? But this gets back to the idea that if you're not addressing the main issue, which is the economy and affordability and stuff, then people don't care what you hate or whether you hate a bridal party or whatever, if you're not addressing the main issue. And so the question to me is going to be the margin. Did people care about whether she made derogatory comments about Nashville and bridal parties and country music because she was actually talking about affordability? Or was this all just a bad polling and the Republicans are there? But I will say the other big takeaway is this, and this is something that I've been hearing for the last probably a week now. If this gets closer and it goes the opposite way, which is like 3-4 points, I think you're going to see a lot more retirements in real quick in the next 2 or 3 months. By, Dan, you made this point over the holidays. That's when the families have a conversation. Mom, Dad, I don't know that I want you to run again, or I don't, this isn't worth it. I talked to a couple members over the last week from Thanksgiving, and the common refrain was, quote, "No one is happy up here."
Yeah.
They feel like they're constantly under attack, that it's not, they're not engaged in the process as much. I mean, there were a million reasons, but that was the through line. And you saw Darrell Issa announcing that he might, because of California redistricting, run in Texas's 32nd district now. I mean, just remind what I just said. California congressman potentially running in Texas's 32nd district because of redistricting. I mean, you're going to see a bunch of musical chairs. And I think that's going to be an issue that will really sort of dominate themes coming into January, February.
Do you guys both think that there are Republicans who would say, I am going to resign to just move the chamber to Democrats? Like, they'll never say it publicly, but as an FU.
They can try to leverage it, though. I mean, apparently they can try to leverage it, though. I mean, like Don Bacon, again, that sort of centrist Republican who is upset about, we mentioned this yesterday, the Russia-Ukraine proposal that was originally put out by the administration, threatened to resign over that, but then ended up not doing so. He is retiring by the end of the year. I have asked people about this more in the past 24 hours, and the response I'm getting is that it's not so much that they're concerned that people will resign because they're mad, like Marjorie Taylor Greene did, but more so because there are multiple investigations into Republican members in the House, ethics investigations regarding affairs and stuff. How do you stop one of those? You resign.
Well,
okay? But there's one more thing, Sean, and that is that a couple of members are having health issues. And it is not public yet that they're having health issues. And so there is a concern that this could accidentally happen. I don't hear it a lot. Like, I don't hear a lot of concern from the leadership level, but like that's just the reality of this slim margin and the fact that there's all these sort of moving parts happening right now. Sorry,
I'll add a number 3 to the list, which is money.
Yeah.
If you're a member of Congress right now, you're in the majority. The Republicans control the White House. If you're going to go look for an opportunity in the private sector, you might as well leave while you've got committee.
I said this yesterday. It's a huge issue. There are big jobs in town that are open at trade associations. If you can make the jump and get that check before somebody else, don't think these
not
members
just before
don't
somebody else, before you're suddenly in the minority.
Yeah, both.
Right?
It's both.
And so
more competition then.
Right. And you're not a chairman or a subcommittee chairman anymore. So I think that a lot of these folks, but this gets back to what Rachel said. There's 1 or 2 people, and again, just do the math, maybe one that can do this without earning the ire of everyone else. If you become the member of Congress that voluntarily quits and were to hand the chamber over to Democrats, we will build monuments and burn you in effigy. I mean, like the idea that you would do that would be the most selfish political act in history.
Unless you're angry.
Right. But I'm just saying that, like, there's a big difference. Like, Marjorie doing it right now is one thing. Congressman or Congresswoman X doing it in 2 months when it would tilt is a completely different story. And this is where I said this after Marjorie announced, and if I were Mike Johnson, I would call a conference, get everyone there, make it mandatory, and say, guys, here's the deal. Go home, talk to your families, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever you celebrate, come back. And if you have any thought of retiring, resigning, taking a trip of more than 48 hours, leaving your state, going skydiving, call me. And like, he needs to get that conference in line.
Well, today's conference meeting, I'm sure, will be interesting. So the next topic we have here is redistricting and 2028. I mean, just, 2 interesting things. One, it looks like Florida is going to, Ron DeSantis announced they are going to try to have a special session to do this. I think we all agree DeSantis still harbors ambitions of running for president, whether it's realistic or not in 2028. This could potentially, if he could net, 2 or 3 more seats for the Republicans, would be a little feather in his cap, given the challenges the party's having. On our side, Wes Moore, frequently talked about as a 2028er, Morning Joe, like George Clooney supposedly is flirting with him as a donor, is struggling. The Maryland, I think it's Senate president, is really resisting doing this. There is frustration with him. Kind of tale of two sides here. One, still trying to pick up House seats, but two, everyone looks at Gavin Newsom now, right? If you can pull this off, it will help you. You guys have any thoughts?
Well, so like, look, here's the thing with Maryland. They only have one to pick up, the Andy Harris seat on the Eastern Shore, which is still a net one. Okay. But the Senate president is right. The courts in Maryland last time said, no, you can't go this far. Right. So he's not saying he doesn't want to do it. He's saying, guys, if we go do this and it gets struck down, the courts are going to redo the map like they did last time, and we could end up in a worse situation. So I get that. Number two, Indiana is voting. The House is voting now. That'll probably pass. The Senate is probably a no-go by 1 or 2 votes right now, and I don't see how that's going to change. So, but here's the interesting thing about Florida, Dan. On the math, the numbers are there, right?
Yeah.
But when you go back and look at the original maps, when DeSantis tried to do this the first time, this was not an easy lift. Even though it's completely Republican controlled, they had a very difficult time getting those maps through. And so the question is going to be, does he garner enough support within the state legislature to get consensus around what a new map would look like? I think they can easily pick up 3 seats. There's some that says potentially 5. But again, I wouldn't overreach. I'd go for the 3. But the thing to me that's going to be interesting is, can DeSantis actually get consensus for any new map that picks stuff up? Because remember, people who have a plus 15 or 20 district aren't always too keen on going down to a plus 10 district. It means I got to come home a little more.
And there's also these weird battle lines, from the 2024 primary, right? Like where people are closer to the president and don't like DeSantis, or vice versa. I'm just looking at
someone.
I'm looking at this purely through the 2028 lens. DeSantis can try to do this to try to, win shits with the party. I mean, of course, he wants to help the party too. It's just really hard for me to see him at this point doing well in 2028. Sean, you can weigh in here if you think things are differently. Like, why would he run against JD Vance? I don't see that.
I mean, Ted Cruz is going to do it.
Yeah, I think a lot of these guys, everybody who's old enough remembers the Clinton race, right? Which was everybody thought, it's a foregone conclusion. Then Bill Clinton said, I'll get in, and became the nominee and won. And so I think anybody that harbors ambitions, it's like continuing to work out, wondering if you're ever going to get that call from the big leagues. And so they're not necessarily maybe full on plot mode, but I think they're like, let's do the things that make political sense to stay in shape so we don't atrophy.
And he's young, but he won't have, the same, platform he had.
And that's what he's got to figure out, is what do I pivot to stay relevant? And that's always the issue that
Secretary of War, right? Maybe I'll
tell you what, if I know that there was always talk of that. I will say that wouldn't be the craziest scenario. But at some point, if Hicks has said, hey, I want to go to move somewhere.
Would JD Vance sign off on that?
Well, I think so. Because remember,
people sign off on that.
If you do that, you'd actually rather have somebody there in the second. If you want someone, I would rather have them towards the latter half of the cabinet than the early part, right? So you lock them in.
Yeah. Put some pudding on the table. All right. So last things here. There's a story obviously that continues to swirl about these indictments of Comey and Letitia James and others, and the fact that the court ruled, and I think there was a stay of it, that the appointment of Lindsay Halligan and what's her name in New Jersey, Haba, I'm mispronouncing
Elena Haba.
Elena Haba. Were not constitutional, that the president did not have the right to do this. Sean, your party, the president's been talking about trying to get rid of the filibuster. Another kind of old school Senate prerogative is that when there is a judicial opening, the senators from that state have what's called a blue slip right, meaning you put the blue slip on them and they will not be considered. Even if 99 other people are for it, if the one senator of the two in that state are against it, it's just an old kind of courtesy that the Senate has always operated under. The idea being you would have to find someone that, that both parties would agree to. And of course, in New Jersey and Virginia, both have two Democratic senators. I mean, does that come up today, you think, at the cabinet meeting? Does Trump rail on this one today? Because those are both kind of slowing down.
I don't know that it comes up at the cabinet meeting, but I do think he's going to start. I wouldn't be surprised if you see a truth about it today or tomorrow. And it is kind of silly. I as a non-lawyer, I'm like, two parts of this. Why? Like, they were both appointed as interim, and I don't understand why. Again, there was an understanding. You get 120 days. So I don't know why this time was. Again, I say that as a layperson. I just don't know the answer to that. Secondly, I do think the blue slip thing has outlasted its usefulness. I mean, the idea that a senator can say, hey, a president isn't entitled to its nominee in a state just because, like, that's kind of ridiculous. So anyway, that's my.
I mean, Republican senators, and this is like the filibuster debate, right? They'll argue that when the shoe is on the other foot,
100%,
these sort of tools allow us to slow down Democrats, whether it's like, Biden appointees or Obama appointees or, legislation when it comes to the filibuster, sort of raising that threshold so they have a say. But then increasingly, seeing the direction of the Democratic Party and that the left is often getting, what they want when it comes to their leaders, they're going to potentially get rid of these things themselves. I mean, that is a possibility. And so you are increasingly hearing some Republicans say, look, ideally, we want to keep all these things, but like the Dems are going to get rid of them. So why don't we just do it first?
Well, I don't think the Democrats have talked about blue slips. They've talked about the filibuster.
I know, but it's
part of the reason for that blue slip is
it's
such a power play for senators because you have to come kiss their butt in their state, right? All the young lawyers, all the aspiring judges that have to go through those senators, whether they're D or R's. And I think to give that up is something that none of them want to do. It's a power play for them at home.
That's probably a bipartisan power play.
Totally. Oh, absolutely. It's both parties. So we'll see. I think we have a question that came in over the YouTube chat. This is off.
By the way, the goal, right, is that when we launch in January, we'll have you guys interacting with us and everything. But
whether it's Zoom or another platform, we will have an interactive lowercase two-way. Okay, the question here is between this is off topic, but curious what their take on the seditious six. To be honest, I think Democrats in the world stage are causing real life problems for the U.S., especially when you military bases all over the world. Great question. Who would like to kick this one off? Rachel, do you want to be the first? We have not heard your take on this issue before.
I like I mentioned yesterday, I just wonder if they knew about this. Like, did somebody by this, I mean, what happened with this second boat strike on September, was it 2nd or 3rd? No, I was watching Morning Joe this morning while I was putting my makeup on and had it on the background. And Mark Kelly was actually asked if they knew about this. And he said, oh, the six of us made that video for reasons like this, but then went back and clarified that he said that they did not, like it wasn't this specifically. So he suggested they did not know.
So what was interesting about that, Rachel, though, is they all ended the video with "Don't give up the ship," which is a very famous War of 1812 Navy saying. And which is weird because Mark Kelly obviously served in the Navy, but Alyssa Slotkin never served in the military. And I'm with you. I was like, why are you guys using a Navy war, like battle cry when you've not served? It sounded very odd to me. And I wondered what you did, which is, are you guys trying to get ahead of something? And
I mean, I think in the big picture, it was a political stunt, right? It was designed to kind of troll the president, to say they obviously didn't cite an example in their message. So everyone kind of wondered in real time, like, are you referring to something? Or as Rachel said, did they know of something that might be coming? But at the end of the day, what they said, which is if you get an illegal order, you don't have to follow it, which is what we started the show talking about, the admiral in the case of the boat strike, that he would never follow an order that he knew to be illegal, in Sean and most people's opinion, because of this guy's credentials. You know, I think the reaction from the Trump world is if Republicans did it, it'd be the same thing. The Democrats would, you know, cry, this is outrageous, and you're planting the seeds of doubt and the chain of defying the chain of command. And the other side would say there's nothing we said that wasn't true in terms of if you get an illegal order. So, you know, it's a classic.
I will say this, but you're sowing doubt in the chain of command, and that is a problem. And what again for I was thinking about this even in the context of Venezuela. Obviously, not in the strike itself, which has happened, you know, through Special Operations Command. But if you're on the Ford and you're a petty officer on the deck and you question an order, Alyssa Slotkin says, "Oh, you should go speak to the JAG officer." That is not like how it works, nor is it realistic, I mean, you'd end up in the brig if you did that. The idea is, and I'm not giving military advice, just to be clear.
Financial or military advice?
None, exactly. But I'm just saying that, like, this, it was dangerous what she did. Absolutely 100% dangerous. And the idea of going out there and saying, well, we were just reminding you, it was sowing doubt. And that's what it was intended to do.
Doubt with the president when he wakes up in the morning. Well, I think with that, that is all that we have for today. We appreciate everyone as always.
We'll have a lot to break down tomorrow between this cabinet meeting, Tennessee 7, and everything that Johnson says today. I think, you know, we'll
day after an election's like Christmas. I mean, it just is the season. So thank you all for
by the
listening.
way, I mentioned this yesterday. Tim Parlatore is on the show tonight. So I am going to spend.
You're going to do a hard-hitting interview with him, right, Sean?
Well, I mean, I will tell you. I mean, I think, like I said, I don't know the answers, but I'm going to ask him everything I just said, which is talk about Venezuela, talk about this Seditious 6 video, and what is legal, what's not. Do they have the right to do? I mean, like, so that if you actually want to know from a military lawyer what is legal or not, tune in tonight at 6.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. And keep up the feedback. We heard from a lot of people yesterday about ideas and things they liked and
flowers.
Yeah, exactly. And didn't like seriously, we are reading it.
Like
we are taking it all.
Microphone.
Yes, exactly. That my microphone was horrific. Thank you very much about that. We loved that so many people love Rachel. We would totally agree and think that she is amazing. But thank you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Have a good day.
Have a good day, guys.